Ark Beyond Ascension, Part 6. Hello everyone. Our journey continues on the beaches of the north. Now I spotted a prime piece of digital real estate just ripe for the taking. So with a gleam in my eye and a thirst for power, I initiated Operation Land Grab. So of course I started by executing the previous resident and then I claimed their land. But I wasn't done yet. Oh no, this was just the beginning. So there I was, standing in my newly claimed territory with a beach full of trees, and I thought, wow, what a beautiful, serene, giant obstacle to my grand plans. So I grabbed my axe and was chopping trees faster than a beaver on a caffeine binge. And by the time I was done, it looked like a lumberjack convention had come through and decided to leave nothing but stumps. So I realized if trees had feelings, I'm pretty sure they'd probably be filing a complaint with the game's Environmental Protection Agency. But I wasn't done yet. Oh no, this was just the beginning. Next up was construction. So it was time to build my new mighty settlement. So I used the resources I had taken from the locals to build this fine new establishment, and I was determined to build the most impressive house this game has ever seen. So, with one thatch piece at a time and a couple of wooden railings and pillars here and there, I watched as my domain transformed from a simple plot of land to a sprawling stronghold. Now with a beautiful deck, a living area, and a work area, this was going to be the perfect home. And there you have it. I have managed to design one of the worst building projects ever. I absolutely loved how it was all coming together, and then the roof just looked like a big pile of dodo dung. Needless to say, I didn't want to spend any more time building, as I was having to do all of the manual labor, and all of the accent pieces I would typically be using to go through and ensure that it wasn't just a complete flat piece of cardboard, were kind of expensive. So once I get a mammoth, I'll definitely be coming back to fix this place up, but for the time being, this will have to do, and it's just gonna have to stay looking like it's a bit amateurish. And with that, let's move on to the next part of our journey. The moment that I set out for base, I actually saw a loot drop in the distance, so I went over and checked it out. Now, this is actually one of my favorite parts about this base location, is that there are quite a few decent drop locations close nearby, and they respawn quite often. And so in the first drop, I actually got some really good stuff. I found the super warm pair of slippers, so that would certainly be helpful when I do go into the snow to try and tame myself a mammoth, and I almost always tame a dire wolf, so that'll also be very helpful. And then the second drop, I actually got two different shotguns, not quite 200%, but yeah, they're pretty darn good. And then in case anybody is wondering, as we do start to collect more loot drops, I have not modified anything with the loot drops themselves. It is all just the standard default settings, but the loot drops tend to be a lot more overpowered, or OP, than they were in ASA. Now my next destination was, I needed some more tames. So I decided I was going to make this very long, dangerous journey clear across to Carno Island. Now, I could have gone the longer way to across the other peninsula by Beaver Lake and then up north to avoid more open ocean, but I'm going to be honest with you. I was a little bit impatient, and I just wanted to make it across, so I risked it. And let's just say that for some reason, the Ark gods decided to play nice, as there was no whales in sight. And everything looked super good. Now, when I did get to Carno Island, I decided to go set up a station on the other side of the island, as that is typically where I set up a little shop or base or my taming traps. Basically, there's no spawns there, so it's quite easy to do so. And I had the intent to try and find myself some Argy, and then if we could find a decent level Argy, I was hoping we could also find a decent raptor or a saber-tooth, so we just had quite a few more options in regards to meat gathering, as well as being able to battle. Now, the moment I started scouting, things became pretty apparent. This was not going to be as easy as I thought, as typically it's pretty easy to kill raptors and saber-tooths and escape them across to the island. But nope, this island had 13 different Rexes on it, 2 alpha raptors, and an alpha carno. This was not going to be a fun time. So I tried my hand against a Rex, and needless to say, he was doing essentially triple the damage I was doing, even with the help of an Argy. And I realized that was not going to work. But then I had an idea. You see, T-Rexes are extremely vicious and savage creatures, but they have both the brain and the arms of a toddler. So I decided we would bait him over to our little island, and I was going to go through and attack him with my crossbow, as most likely that was going to be doing far more damage than what Blueberry was able to do, and then I was no longer going to be risking his life as turning into a chicken wing for this Rex. And, sure enough, I was pleasantly surprised. Things went exactly as planned. Yes, he did make it kind of close, and we did have to fly away a couple of different times on Blueberry, but we managed to take him down. And suddenly I was feeling a whole lot more powerful with this super buffed up crossbow, because I could basically take on anything that I wanted to as long as it was slow and dumb. So you know what that means. That means I went on a Rex killing spree. I went through and I baited as many as I could over to this island, and I proceeded to kill each and every single one of them. And for some reason, some of them just weren't willing to come to the back of the island. They would sit there and get halfway to me and then just spin around. I don't know if they had heard the tales of the vicious Blueberry who had killed the Alpha Raptors, or if they just were kind of dumb and, they got a small brain. I don't know. Either way, it worked out in our favor. It took literally all day to kill the majority of the Rexes, but we did manage to finally accomplish it. Now, between us killing the Rexes and the Rexes going through and killing off all the low-level creatures, we had actually started a respawn on a lot of the creatures here on the island, and so now there was a plethora of Argies. Now, the only problem is that the Argies were all very, very weak. But not so weak that they did not pose a problem, as I was actually having more difficulty fighting them on Blueberry than I was with the Rexes. Because at least with the Rexes, I could hop off and go through and shoot them with the bow, and, it was easy to get to them because they were on the ground, but the Argies continued to fly. So I had to bait them with Blueberry, land on the ground, shoot them once or twice, and for some reason there's a small delay the moment you dismount your bird, so you cannot fire right away. So this typically meant I would get 1 or 2 shots in on one bird, and then I would have to rinse and repeat. But they were doing far more damage to Blueberry than Blueberry was doing to them, especially when they were in a pack, and on top of that, they also had their natural heal, which has posed a lot of problems for us. So this was a very, very slow and painful process, and I do not advise ever fighting an Argentavis with a Pelagornis. It will not work out in your favor. And then I did have a little accident while fighting the Argentavis. I accidentally ran into an Explorer Knight while trying to run away from them on Blueberry, and I got the extra XP buff when I didn't want it. So that just meant that I tried to go through and kill everything that I could, but again, I was too terrified to fight them with Blueberry, so this meant a lot of just baiting them towards me, shooting them with a crossbow, and watching them fall, hopefully before they got to me, because if they would come from far away due to a corpse, they were pretty easy to snipe out of the sky, as they would just fly in a straight line. But if you get them circling a corpse, then it's a whole lot more difficult, and if they're in a pack, then they can go through and get their mate boost as well, which made it even more challenging. But I did go through and manage to get some good experience on my Survivor out of that. Blueberry did not get so much. And I continued the search for a high-level Argentavis. And then I saw one of the most terrifying things I had seen in this playthrough or in all of Ark. There was not 1, but 2 Alpha Raptors with a pair of Ceratosaurus. Let's just say I got the heck out of there. There was no way I was going to fight them with Blueberry. Blueberry would not stand a chance. He would become a little dino nugget. So we would be coming back for that, because that was going to be way too difficult, and I continued the search through the night. And sadly, there was nothing. But then our patience finally paid off. There was a level 110 RNG that I actually found flying around on the opposite side of the island of where our safe little island was located, so I did have to go through and spend quite a bit of time provoking him to come over. That usually involved me spinning around, hitting him once or twice once he got less interested in us, and having him follow us and staring at the weird insides of his body. And the only problem was he was only level 110, so typically when I go to look for creatures that I want to tame or breed for high-level stuff, 135 tends to be the bare minimum, but at this point I was not going to be picky, as I had not seen a single 100-plus RG so far, so I figured it'd at least be easier to deal with the creatures here on Carno Island with the RG than it would be with Blueberry. So I went through and I baited him over here, hoping we could trap him. However, he lost interest at the very last minute, and it turns out that I had actually provoked a Sabertooth instead, so we made quick work of him, and then got our RG friend all the way back over here and ready to get trapped. And then we let him directly into our RG trap. Now, for those of you that have not seen this, it's pretty simple. Fly your Pelagornis or PT through, go through, flip the door, and he's trapped. It's a 4-piece trap. Super simple. And if you are interested in the trap and for some reason haven't seen the guide but are watching the playthrough instead, then I will go through and include the link to the tutorial for this trap and a couple of other traps that I have designed in the description. And he went through and he damaged the wood structures, but pretty much any RG, even a max level 150, will not go through and break through wood structures faster than what you can knock them out. The only problem you may run into when doing this would be if you, for example, damaged them a bunch and they run and die and you need to feed them a corpse. And then you needed more time to do that, then they potentially could break out, but more often than not, they won't break out of the wood structures. They will damage them, making them, not usable or able to be picked up until you repair them, but at this point, I just planned on getting him, and since it's so cheap to build this, I mean, if he damages 4 pieces of wood, I'm really not too concerned. I can go through and just make a new one. And there he was. He was finally knocked out. So now I was going to have to go through and find him some prime meat so we could get him tamed up. Now, I couldn't find any babies here on the island, as that would have been the easiest source of prime meat to go through and get, as dealing with Argies was quite hard, and Rex was just a time investment, and carnos were a huge no-go. But I did manage to go through and get a Rex here in the water, and essentially I kind of just chomped at his butt, made him spin in a circle, and he was very, very sluggish, and we're able to kill him without too many problems. So basically, as long as I stay away from his head and near his butt, yeah, everything was good, and we got some prime meat. Now, at the time of this gameplay, I had not actually realized that I had not completely destroyed the corpse and that his tail was still sticking out there in the water, so that was a big whoopsies. But I actually found an alpha raptor, and he was the next source of prime meat, and at first I did not want to go through and actually fight him, as he had a buddy here. He actually had a carno, and then he also had a scorpion, and the scorpion was just this very scary-looking floating bug. Yeah, it was intimidating, but I did go through and fight the Alpha Raptor using the similar technique that I showed you previously, where I basically can just go through and goad him in the water, get him to spin in a circle, hit him a couple times, and then I even would go up on the rocks and shoot him with some arrows, and to get the headshot damage. That's what I should have been doing the whole time. I just had not considered that. The headshot damage with this crossbow was insane on the Alpha Raptors. I just did not realize that during this fight, so it took me a hot minute. But I did go through and kill him using the ability to just float in the water, and that gave us all the prime meat that we needed for the Argy. Now, my intent was to feed the Argy as soon as I got back, but I ran into a bit of an issue, and it was hot as heck outside. I was actually going to go through and die from heat stroke, and I didn't have a bed built over here, and I just had my Pelagornis, and I had the raft, so there was no way I wanted to die and have to respawn all the way back on the other side. So I ran into the water, and thankfully, the water cooled me off. I then proceeded to spend the next 5 through 10 minutes in real life in that water until it was finally cool enough for me to actually leave, and I actually swapped out for the cloth gear, as that kept me slightly cooler than what the chitin armor was. But after it cooled down, I went and fed my RJ the meat, tamed him up, and we had ourselves a new friend, and I wanted to go through and take him out on a fight, but I realized I did not actually have enough chitin to form a saddle, so I figured we'd go look for some scorpions, and farming it up shouldn't be too much of an issue. But unfortunately, there was literally only one scorpion, and before I got to find another, our bird had died. Yep, the same RG we had spent all day trying to tame had just went through and got killed by a couple of wild rogue Argies. I did not know whether to be sad or mad. But then I realized I wanted revenge. So I was going to go through and deal with the culprits that caused this to happen, that had wasted my time and taken my dear friend. So I went through in the pursuit of the death of this Alpha Raptor and these wild Argies. Now, Blueberry is actually getting really close to death, and I did not want to risk him dying, as we had already lost the Argy. So I went through and I set him down on the rock, and I figured I would go through and lend a helping hand with the crossbow. And it was at this point in time that I realized just how effective these headshots were on Alpha Raptors, and I would definitely be taking advantage of these in the future. And then I looked at this Ratosaurus and said, yep, nope, buddy, we are not going to fight you. He is dangerously scary, because every time you hit him, you actually take some sort of like thorns damage back. It is awful. But I went through and I continued my search for Argies, hoping and praying that I'd find another high-level friend. And unfortunately, I did not. There was nothing near our sacred little island that was going to be a decent level, and I was extremely weak, or Blueberry was at least, and I could not continue fighting as he was going to need to rest up. So at this point in time, I figured this would be a good place to conclude our journey. We did go through and get ourselves an RG, but unfortunately he died. And we did go through and get ourselves some decent level loot today, and we also got through and ranked up to level 84, so we are slowly working towards that max level and some of the high-end late-game items. Alright, well, if you guys did enjoy today's video, then please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you're not already.